there hadn't been anything like that in the North Country. And I remember that first concert, sitting in the first rehearsal, and how special that felt, knowing that an ensemble of this caliber was now and hopefully, through the future, going to be available to the people of the North Country. And I enjoyed that so much.
From NCPR, this is Northwards. People, stories, and ideas from Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Foundation, in support of the Adirondack Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities.
My days as a musician peaked my senior year of high school. I played alto saxophone, but 2 days before our jazz band left for a festival competition at Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia, our lead tenor sax player came down with chicken pox. I filled in on tenor, we won the competition, and, well, I never really played sax regularly again. Kind of a bummer now that I think of it. But my days as a musician started with the first time I heard one particular saxophone-heavy pop song in the late 70s. But this episode is not about my love for music. It is about the music Jim Madeja has loved for decades. Madeja is a trumpet player, a founding member of the Orchestra of Northern New York, a longtime member of the Potsdam Brass Quintet, and over the years, he taught scores of up-and-coming trumpet players and would-be band directors during his tenure on the faculty of the Crane School of Music. Today, he is retired from full-time teaching, but this weekend, he takes a turn as a conductor for the Orchestra of Northern New York as the group's brass and percussion ensemble presents its holiday concerts called Holiday in Brass. But before any of this, there was that moment that Jim Madeja became a musician. Jim Madeja, welcome to Northwards.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So I want to talk about this weekend's concerts, but before we do that, I want to flash back because you are conducting the Orchestra of Northern New York, but you were also a charter member of the orchestra. When you think back to the early days of ONNY and think about where it is now, what was it like? What was the orchestra like as it got started, and what do you think of this organization today?
Well, I'll tell you, when I think back to that first year, and it was originally the Chamber Orchestra of Northern New York, there hadn't been anything like that in the North Country. And I remember that first concert, sitting in the first rehearsal, and how special that felt, knowing that an ensemble of this caliber was now and hopefully, through the future, going to be available to the people of the North Country. And I enjoyed that so much. The credit all goes to Ken Andrews, who was the founder and the first music director. And he was music director for 35 years and just retired at the end of last year.
Well, and it must have felt a little like a calculated risk to try this in. I mean, this is not a super populated area to have a professional orchestra.
That's true. And Ken had to make some decisions on what this orchestra was going to be like. Was it going to be a Potsdam-based orchestra? And he really wanted it to be a North Country-based orchestra. And so if you take a look at the concerts that we performed, we would play in Potsdam or in Lake Placid or Saranac Lake, or we'd go out to Plattsburgh, or, we'd play so many different places that we truly were the orchestra of the North Country.
So talk about what brought you to music in the first place, having been on the faculty at Crane for as long as you were, and being in music even before that. What was the spark that attracted you to the brass world in the first place?
To the brass world?
Well, or maybe to music.
No, actually to the brass world. I know exactly what it was, and you're going to think this is odd, but back in the 60s, there was a group, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
We were literally just talking about them in the station 2 days ago.
and Herb Alpert was a trumpeter. I enjoyed that group, and when it came time to join the school band, I wanted to play trumpet because Herb Alpert played trumpet. And incidentally, John Ellis, who for the past 36 years was the other trumpet instructor at Crane, played trumpet for the exact same reason, because of Herb Alpert.
You never got to work with the people that did the cover art for Whipped Cream and Other Delights, though.
No. No, that's quite a famous album cover.
It is a very famous album cover. Well, and it's interesting to think about that. I mean, I long ago gave up my saxophone playing, but the thing that got me into it was a pop song in the mid-'70s called Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty. And I remember hearing the saxophone riff, and I knew when band or orchestra in my elementary school was starting, that was the instrument I wanted to play.
Yeah, that's true for so many people. There's that one person that makes the difference.
So talk about just going from really liking Herb Alpert to pursuing a career in this world.
I made my decision. I should say I came from a very small community with a small high school. The entire music program was a single band that was a concert band, marching band. And that was the entire music program.
And this was where?
This was in Lamont, Illinois. It was a suburb of Chicago. And it was about my late sophomore, maybe early junior year, that I talked to my band director and thought I might want to make music a career. And from that point on, he was constantly giving me recordings to listen to, books to read. And he was amazing. He taught me how to do show designs for the marching band, and even let me write shows for them. And so I ended up having lots of experiences that other people didn't have. And I went to school at the University of Illinois. Had tremendous music education degree program there, and then I taught in the school system in the Chicago area, did my doctoral work, and then came to Crane.
Wow. Do you think that experience with that high school band director sort of shaped or informed the kind of teacher and then professor that you became?
It did, particularly because a big part of my responsibilities at Crane was teaching instrumental music education courses. And so I'm essentially helping to prepare students to be future school band directors.
Well, and it seems like one of the lessons in that is if you find someone who's really interested in this, do what you can to kind of further their interest. I mean, just the idea that, this director gave you recordings to listen to. I mean, it really makes all the difference, right?
It really does. Yeah. At the same time, and he was so good about this, it wasn't a vocational ed type of program. Right. So students who chose not to go into music, he didn't treat them any differently.
Well, and now interesting to think of over the 30 plus years that you did this at Crane, there are generations of high school band directors out there or middle school band directors that sort of wear their mark of working with Jim Madeja.
Well, now I just feel old.
As if the Herb Alpert thing didn't.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, so let's talk about the concerts that are coming up.
Sure.
And it must have been, I don't know, was it an honor to have the Orchestra of Northern New York call you and say, we need you for this concert?
Oh, it certainly was. I mean, for 35 years, Ken Andrews conducted all the concerts. And so this year, with the national search going on for the next music director, the October and April concerts are going to feature the two finalists. And the other concerts, they're bringing in guest conductors. And so they invited me to conduct the December concert. And the orchestra board decided to experiment with different formats, and so they thought, well, let's try a brass and percussion ensemble for this, and that's a perfect concert for it because there's so much great holiday music written for brass and percussion, and so they invited me to conduct, put together the program, and and we're looking forward to it.
Well, and so what was your approach? What kinds of how do you walk us through when you're given the assignment to conduct a concert? What's the process of deciding what you're going to feature and what it takes advantage of?
Well, when it comes to programming, sometimes you'll start with a theme, and of course, with this being a holiday concert, the theme is already built in, and so it comes down to breaking that down to what is this going to look like, and I sort of wanted to honor 4 celebrations. I mean, one is the spiritual side of Christmas, one is the secular side of Christmas, and then Hanukkah and Kwanzaa as well. And so there's literature that honors those 4 celebrations. I should say there's also one piece on the program that's not a holiday piece. I included a Gabriele canzona. Having that fantastic group of brass players, I just couldn't not program some Gabriele. Gabriele is real important in the brass world. He was the music director at the Basilica of San Marcos in Venice in the late 1500s and early 1600s. And one of the architectural features of that basilica were multiple balconies. And so Gabriele used that as an opportunity to take choirs, whether they be vocal choirs or instrumental choirs, and place them in the different balconies. And they would play across from each other. They would play what's today we call antiphonal music, or sound against sound. And antiphonal music had been around for maybe 40 years, before that, but not to the extent of what Gabriele did. I mean, he could not just have 2 choirs; he could have 3 or 4 different choirs because of all these balconies. And so we're actually going to feature a Gabriele canzona that will have one of the choirs in the front of the hall and the other in the back of the hall. So the audience will be sitting between the 2 choirs and sort of experiencing this stereophonic sound like the people in the congregation at the Basilica of San Marcos.
700 years ago or 600 years ago. My math is bad. 500 years ago. Well, and it's interesting to think about because we think of the science of acoustics as being a relatively modern phenomenon, but here was somebody who was really practicing it centuries ago.
Mm-hmm. Right. And a big part of that is he was relating to the architecture or taking advantage of the architecture that was there.
Is it, I maybe this is a strange question, but as the person who is both selecting the program and trying to get the most out of the musicians who are playing the program, it feels a little, in my mind, as someone who's never had the experience of doing this, as almost unwrapping a new toy. The idea that you really can, try to shape this orchestra to do what you want it to do, with your artistic vision in mind.
Well, the brass ensemble is a real special kind of toy. When word got out that Orchestra of Northern New York was going to be performing a brass ensemble concert for December 2023, I started getting calls from people asking, "Do you need another trumpet? Do you need another horn?" And the numbers that we use exceed the number of players who are regular members of the orchestra. I mean, we're going to have 6 trumpets, 4 horns, 4 trombones, 2 euphoniums, 2 tubas, and a percussion section. So in addition to the regular members of the orchestra and players who are on the faculty at the Crane School of Music who are not members of the orchestra, there are also players who are coming from pretty long distances just to play with the orchestra. But there's just something about brass ensemble that 2 brass players is really special, and players want to come and play that.
From a logistical standpoint, when you have players coming from so far away, how do you ensure that you have enough time to work with them, that this performance or these performances sound as good as they should?
Well, when I was contracted to to conduct this, one of the first things is working out the schedule. So, how many hours of rehearsal time, will we have? And then the orchestra librarian then sends music out to everyone. So when they come to that first rehearsal, they're prepared. And then a big part of it is up to me to stay on the rehearsal schedule to be sure that happens.
How much rehearsal time does, with the full ensemble, does go into a concert like this?
Well, the Orchestra of Northern New York typically has 3-hour rehearsals for a concert. This concert, we have 2 3-hour rehearsals. It's not quite as simple as that because the second rehearsal is the morning of the first concert. And this is a pretty taxing concert for brass players, so I've got to be careful. There's going to be a lot of rehearsing going on the day before, but the day of, I've got to be careful how far I can push them because they need to be on their A game for the evening concert.
Right. This is a lot of. It takes clearly a lot of work with your embouchure and
right.
and not having been a brass player, I imagine at the end of the 2 concerts plus these rehearsals, your lips have to be really tired.
That's true. On the other hand, these are professional players that are accustomed to playing 6-7 hours a day.
But as you say, still you want to make sure that they that they're not over rehearsed so that they're able
right.
to bring their A game to it.
Yep.
What has kept you excited about? I mean, I know you're retired now, but you're obviously still around the profession and still around music. What has kept you so connected to it over the years?
I can't imagine having done anything other than having been a music teacher and a performing musician. So when I retired, that part of it really didn't change for me. I still do a lot of playing. I played, for 36 years with the Potsdam Brass Quintet, and I no longer, play regularly with that group. But I now have a brass quartet, that I play in the area when people need trumpeters. I'll play. A lot of the schools hire players for their musicals, play in the pit. I think last year I played 6 musicals in the North Country. In fact, last weekend I just played one here in Potsdam.
Legally Blonde, I believe
that's
was,
right.
yes.
Yeah.
I have a son at Potsdam High School. Well, Jim Madeja, it's been really a delight to talk with you. Congratulations on these concerts, Break a Leg, and I hope we'll talk again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for NCPR's support of the Orchestra of Northern New York.
Jim Madeja taught trumpet and instrumental music education at the Crane School of Music for more than 3 decades. This weekend, he conducts the Orchestra of Northern New York's brass and percussion ensemble concerts in Potsdam on Saturday and Watertown on Sunday. You can find a link to more about the concerts at ncpr.org/northwards. That is also where you can listen back to previous episodes of this podcast and find other links, including one to that late 70s song that made me pick up the saxophone and make it sound nothing like the song I was listening to. Ethan Shanty, tell us who puts this show together and what song made you a musician.
Thanks, Mitch. Alto sax was my first instrument, and the song that made me want to pick it up, Yakety Yak by the Coasters.
Take out the papers and the trash.
You can let us know the song that inspired you to pick up the sax or the drums or the guitar by sending Mitch an email, mitch@ncpr.org. Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, edited, and produced by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me, Ethan Shanty. Doyle Dean is our production manager, Bill Hanel is our digital guy, and Caitlin Kelly handles our social media. To find more great shows and to support the station, head to ncpr.org. This is NCPR, North Country Public Radio.